Hello, everyone who's joining. Every time there are a few people coming in, I'm wondering if I should keep saying hello, everyone, until I have a bunch of people in the Zoom. But welcome everyone to Honest Conversations. I haven't been online for a while. I mean, I've been online, but not on this virtual stage. Mindvalley community probably knows we had a massive, huge, the biggest event Mindvalley has ever held live in Dubai. It was now 2 weekends ago, and we had 2,000 people live. I don't think we've had anything this big. So now we are safely back to our homes and back to our regular work. But I do have a not very regular, not very common type of or kind of conversation, not very common topic for today's Honest Conversations. Today, my guest is Adam. Adam, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. Excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm also excited. And I'll do the official introduction, the traditional reading out the bio. And after we're done with the official part, we'll go straight into the topic. So Adam Vibe Gunton is the best-selling author of From Chains to Saved, One Man's Journey Through the Spiritual Realm of Addiction, and founder of Recovered on Purpose. After overcoming homelessness and IV drug addiction in 2017, Adam set out on a mission to help as many addicts find recovery as possible. After publishing his book and receiving messages and emails from all over the world of people who found recovery and God through his book, Adam founded Recovered on Purpose with the mission of raising up an army of addicts in recovery to share their stories powerfully and publicly to reach addicts suffering with a message of hope they desperately need. With new and creative ideas not used in the treatment industry, Adam and the Recovered on Purpose family are reaching countless addicts suffering while preventing relapse in their own recovery. So welcome once again, Adam. And for people who are joining, I want to say that it's actually not my first meeting with Adam, and I was so impressed. I was a guest on Adam's show, and I was so impressed. I think right in the middle of the show, I said, I want to interview you on my own show. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Christina. I'm excited about this.
And as I said, we don't often in Mindvalley talk about addiction, but I think it's a very important, relevant, and actually it's the topic which touches many more people than we sometimes want to admit. And of course, with Adam, we'll be talking about addiction the way, this word is understood generally, but I believe that there are slightly softer types of addictions, which are still addictions and also destructive, but maybe not as toxic, if we're talking about biology and chemicals in our body. So Adam, before we go, I have to ask, because it's such a topic. How come you became addicted, and can you share that part of your story? Because why I'm asking that is very often, if you haven't faced that kind of situation, you think that this is something so far away and so not part of your own reality, that we people who haven't struggled with addiction probably don't even understand how it begins and how do you end up in such situation.
Right. Well, it was September 28th, 2008, and I'd been out drinking and partying like most nights of my freshman year of college when I woke up to my phone ringing and vibrating down by my leg. And I swam through the soft sheets to find my hard phone with the bright screen that read 4:47 a.m. and my best friend Chucker was calling me. And I remember having the conscious choice that I could either answer the phone like I always do with, "Hey, what's up, Chuck?" Or I could answer the way I was feeling with, "Hello." And in my still drunken state, I chose the latter, to which a soft voice replied, "Hey, what's up? Why are you calling me this late?" "I was just calling to say hi." "Don't call me this late again." And I hung up on him, and he shot himself.
Oh.
And for nearly a decade after that, I was unable to share that phone call with anyone, as I bottled it down deeper and deeper and deeper with drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol were no longer a way to party and have fun. They had become my solution to life, the way that I felt, the way that I thought, and basically everything that came at me. And now, before this, when I was growing up, I grew up in a infamous city, Littleton, Colorado. I went to Columbine High School. I was a, all-state football player, all-state wrestler. I was the home run derby hitter at the Little League World Series, and a straight A student up until I was 12 years old, and was introduced to cocaine by an older influence, we'll say. Mm-hmm. And the whole time I was going through my successful kind of, student athlete career, I had this deep, dark secret that I was partying on the weekends. And then it started to trickle into school. And I was just using the drugs and just drinking and stuff just to have fun. It just felt good. But then when that event happened, that's all I knew to use to cope with things. And I had this guilt for what happened. And I just consciously started using drugs to mask that. And then everything that happened from then on, I used drugs for. It was my solution. And when you start to get into the harder drugs, there's the biological factor of getting addicted to opiates. Anybody can get addicted to opiates. Like, I think 60% of people that are given a 30-day prescription for Percocet will become physically addicted. Mm-hmm. But I also believe that there's something different with some of us and some of our minds that make us susceptible to addiction when we get that part of our brain triggered. So it's coupled with environment, choice, and something that I was born with.
I actually also I've realized I tend to sometimes say an addictable personality, and it's not necessarily hard drugs. Sometimes people get addicted to more innocent things. But when you were on this path, were you realizing that it was a dangerous path, that you were going into a dead end kind of journey?
Not until I was already stuck, because, and this is part of what Recovered on Purpose does, I wish that when I was 12, 13, 14, maybe 15, a man would have come into my life that had been through what I was about to go through and share with me where it went. The only program I ever had to teach me about drugs was the DARE program. And everybody, if you haven't heard or read, the DARE program either A, had zero effect, or B, had a negative effect on drug use in the United States. So this authoritarian, figure, a cop coming in and telling you about all these drugs that you shouldn't do, is totally different than someone who has walked the path of using drugs and can tell you everything that it takes from you. So I didn't realize until it was too late, until I realized that I can't stop. And then it started to get scary.
So maybe I'm running a little too fast with this conversation, but I want to ask, right now, when you're much more experienced and you've gotten through this journey, can you think of something which could have helped you not to go down this path, apart from actually maybe meeting a person who could have told you what is ahead, what is going to happen to you?
Yeah, I talk to parents about this all the time. Yeah. The number one thing that you have to watch is the influences on your children, period. And the conversation has to be had in the home 100% of the time, because you can't count on the public school system or wherever they're going, the social circle that they're in, to teach them about drugs. And now the drugs are way more dangerous and way more deadly than they have ever been in history. So the conversation is needed more now than ever before. I don't fault parents of millennials. I don't fault anybody for not having this, foresight to know what was going on, because I was also able to have all these things going on that made everybody think everything was going great. I was homecoming king. I took 3 Broncos cheerleaders to my senior year homecoming. There are all these different things that made me look really good out here, but the conversation was never had that, I could have had the opportunity to be honest about what was going on.
How did your family take it when they found out that you have a problem?
My family is incredible. I'm very, very blessed in that aspect. And a lot of people in this community don't have that kind of family support. But it goes in waves. With a supportive family, with a family that, is incredibly close and incredibly loving. It goes in waves. First it's shock, and then it's, how can we help? And then it keeps on that how can we help thing. And then it's like, we can't talk anymore because we can't enable you. This tough love type thing. And then as soon as recovery starts happening, it's, come right back in. That's how, the process in my family happened.
I want to ask this question first, because then we'll go really more serious questions. So I know that you approach the topic of addiction quite unconventionally. And I remember when I was on your show, I was feeling a little bit shaky and worried that, walking on thin ice, am I allowed to say this? Or maybe I'm being insensitive. And you kind of put me at ease, saying that, no, we have to talk about that.
Yes.
So could you explain what's wrong in the contemporary discourse about this topic, and what do you do different so that people understand where we are?
Yeah, I was trying to get sober for years. I was in 12-step fellowships. I was, in this regular community, and I love everybody in this community. What I found was that working with addicts that are suffering and babying them and telling them that it's all going to be okay, and that kind of communication doesn't work. Period. You have to grab somebody by their shirt and say, you're dying. You have work to do. You have to heal. You have to do this, or you're destined for suffering the rest of your life. It has to be really, really directed at them. And then there's, once you're in recovery, we need to stop telling addicts everything that they have to avoid. All the triggers of life and all the things that are going to make them relapse, and all of, we're causing this selective attention, phenomenon in the recovery community, where we're focused over here on everything we can't do. And then when these things inevitably pop up, inevitably you're going to go through a breakup. Inevitably you're going to walk by a bar. But if we're focused on that being something that's going to make us relapse, then we're going to have that opportunity in our head. So what we have to do as a community is shift the focus completely away from everything that we can't do and refocus on everything that we can do. And that's why I'm so excited about this conversation on Mind Valley, because it's all about personal development. It's all about what areas of your life, what strengths do you have in your life to grow on to become the best version of you possibly can. Because when somebody in recovery has all of these things in their life, they have this purpose, they have this mission, this dream for their life, when they walk by a bar, they don't even think about it. They're not like, I have way too much to live for. I'm not even going there, and this has actually become a thing in my course. I've noticed this actually working, because we never talk about triggers, never talk about what's going to make us relapse. And I have people in my course that have brought things to the group like, hey, I don't know if I should do this or not, because it seems like something that might, damage our relationship. So they bring it to the community, and I think it's amazing.
So pretty much finding new purpose in life is the way out.
100%. Yes.
So how did you, I'll still talk about your experience a little bit, but I have more questions, of course. How did you start the journey back? What was the turning point for you to finally actually get out of addiction?
Yeah, there was actually there was a point in my addiction where I was found unresponsive from overdose by the police. And that video, the body cam footage of that video has been seen by like over 5 million people now, and it has become something that's helped a lot of people. But I suffered for 2 years after that. You would think that seeing yourself on video in a courtroom being charged with a felony, dead in front of you, would cause you to stop, but I couldn't stop. I was going to meetings, all of these things, I couldn't stop. And it got to this point where I was homeless. I was 86 from the homeless shelter, so I was unable to even go there to eat because I couldn't stop using. I'm 215 pounds right now. I was 148 pounds at the end.
Oh, wow.
And it got to this point where I was sitting in this car that this person let me borrow, and I was going to Bible study and church and all these different things. And before Bible study this one night, I just sat back in this chair, and I realized, like, I can't stop. I've tried everything that's available here. And I audibly said to God, I said, I'm done. I'm not going to this Bible study. I'm not going to church. I'm not going to these meetings anymore. Please just let me die. And when I said that, I remember how honest I was. I remember that I was at a point where I literally did not want my life anymore, and I wanted to give it up. And that's where a huge shift happened in me. And I heard a whisper, like it's a familiar whisper for me. I hear it in my heart. And he said, it's time, go. And at first, I didn't get this like sense of like power, like, yes, like he's going to do it. But at first I got this sense of anger, because how is this the time? What's different about this time than all the times that I've taken all my dope and flushed it down a toilet, said I'm never going to use again, and then pawned my TV in the morning? What's different about this time? So I'm like screaming at him and I'm crying, I'm hitting the roof of the car. And then I get through this, I get through all this yelling and crying, and then he just repeats himself and he said, it's time, go. And I go to the Bible study. I bust in the room 12 minutes late. They're in the middle of prayer, and I drop down on my knees and I throw my hands and I say, guys, I can't stop. Please help me. Please help me. But I remember the difference from that time and all the other meetings I had gone to, all the other times that I'd gone to church and everything. I was no longer throwing my hands up to that Bible study or a pastor or a 12-step fellowship. I was throwing my hands up in surrender to God, asking him to help me and telling him I would do whatever it takes. And then 5 days later, I am at IHOP, International House of Pancakes. It's a chain in the United States. It's like a diner. And my best friend, Brendan, you know, he picked me up from homeless shelter, from the streets, all different places to take me places. And he was buying me breakfast. And at the time I have 5 days clean and I'm like ecstatic. I can't believe it. I'm like, I'm actually doing it, you know, because 5 days is a miracle. And I'm talking to Brendan, and then I get this text message on my phone. It's this little flip phone, and I open it up, and it was from my dope dealer. He was like, hey, bro, I just got some new stuff. It's fire. I'll give you a free 20 to try out. And right when I read it, I felt something go all the way through my body, like some kind of spirit going all the way through my body. My toes were tingling. My fingers were tingling. I lost my peripheral vision. All I could see was my phone. And then my thumbs just started texting back. And it was in like King James. It was like, ye shall not text me again. Thou hast texted me for the last time. It was going crazy. And then at the end, it said, and fear the pain you cause your son, because your son isn't blessed with the Holy Spirit. And then I feel the Spirit leading me. I was like, what the heck? And I'm reading it, and I like show it to Brendan. I was like, Brendan, that was not me. I was like, I don't know what that was. That was not me. You have to imagine someone 148 pounds, 5 days clean and sober, telling you, I didn't write that. I didn't write that. But I push send, and I'm putting it in my pocket, and I'm looking down at my pocket. I was like, dude, I don't know what that was. I don't know who that was. And I look back up, and Jesus is sitting across from me. The entire restaurant had completely disappeared. All I could see was a vision of him smiling at me, a glow coming from behind him. I immediately knew it was happening, immediately knew who he was. And I fell with my face at the table, my hand up. I said, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And I haven't used since. The interesting thing is that although I believe God is able to immediately heal people, take away their cravings and all that kind of stuff, that didn't happen for me. For the next 3 weeks, I was withdrawing. I was shaking, needing dope. I was sick. But what I did was I embarked on the 12 steps. There was work I had to do to begin my healing. And on day 25 sober, I did my first ever 5th step, which is where you basically, talk to your sponsor about all the things you've been through and look for character defects and that kind of stuff. And on day 26, he came and picked me up like he did every morning from the sober living house, 6:30 a.m. in his 1983 mailman Jeep. And we're driving to go do the work. And I'm looking over at this beautiful sunrise. And for the first time since I was 12 years old, I had no desire to drink or use. And I start crying, and I look at him. I'm like, thank you, Aaron. Thank you. And hasn't come back since.
So how I understand that your experience was spontaneous and not planned for, and in a way probably you hit your rock bottom at some point. How can you replicate that for people who are struggling? Did you figure out how to evoke this kind of experience or this kind of awakening in other people?
And that's what's interesting about it, right? And that's why I make sure that people hear that second part where I wasn't immediately, cured right there or anything. Because stories like this are not uncommon. You hear it all the time in the recovery community, where this profound spiritual experience happens that, gets you to a point where you find recovery.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't happen for the majority of people.
Yeah.
But the work, there are different programs out there. 12 steps have worked for millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of different treatment centers and communities and things, but it takes the person working, whether you have that spiritual experience or not. There's a spiritual awakening that happens where you realize a total conscious shift towards drugs happens inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I share both experiences because I think they're both important to share,
Mm-hmm.
but that's something between, them and their higher power.
Mm-hmm. So I know that there are some people who want to join in the conversation, and Bianca, if you could bring up someone already, but I do want to ask also this question. As a background, I was born and raised in the Soviet Union. In Soviet Union, our understanding of drugs was very black and white. So
Yeah.
alcohol was okay, mostly, I believe the cultures that formed Soviet Union are a little into that. But the drugs, everything was called drugs, including, for example, marijuana, which
Mm-hmm.
nowadays people are saying it's not really a drug. And I know that in personal growth community, a lot of people, and especially in biohacking community, a lot of people are experimenting with psychedelics and such substances. But with my background, I have this total terror of anything and also complete not understanding the differences. Is there, if we are to talk about addictions, if we are to talk about drugs openly and without fear, are there differences between, between the different substances? Is it all a slippery slope, or are some things way worse? And also, probably the biggest question, this terror, this feeling that, if somebody has gone down that path, there is no way back, and you can't truly, completely recover from that. Can you address this medieval approach that I have?
Absolutely. So in a 3-part answer.
Yeah.
Number one, if you have that fear and you've never tried them, why would you?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you? There's no reason to. Number two, when it comes to psychedelics and things, I am all for people exploring their minds. What I would recommend to people that are in that arena is don't get addicted to that experience in order to find who you are. Use that experience to find who you are and bring it into reality. Because I have friends that, are doing a lot of psychedelics, and you can tell the difference that it starts to take you to a place where you can't bring yourself back from that to help reality. You have to keep, doing those experiences. And number three, for someone like me, I just can't do any of it. If I take a drink of alcohol, I can't stop. If I smoke a little weed, I'll end up smoking crack. That's just how I am. And for people that, if they wanted to experiment, I'm not against people doing whatever they want with their lives. Mm-hmm. But don't ever experiment with the big three: heroin, meth, crack. Nothing good can come of it. So no reason to.
Mm-hmm. But how about this idea that if you have become addicted to something strong, like the big three, for example, that there is no way out, no matter how much work you put and no matter how long.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a huge difference between being recovered and being cured. So for instance, let's say you have a flu. Mm-hmm. And when you are, you have all the symptoms, you're super sick, you're in bed, you have this sickness, and then you start recovering from it. You say, okay, I'm recovering from the flu. My symptoms are starting to subside. I'm recovering from it. And then you recovered from the flu, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have any symptoms. You're totally 100%. Now, when an addict is recovering, they're still working on their mind. They're still working on their cravings. They're still working on their withdrawals. They're getting to this place. But when that psychic change happens to where you can be around whatever and drugs don't have that pull on you anymore, you are recovered. You're recovered from the state of mind, body, and soul where you are incapable of controlling yourself to use drugs. That's what the disease of addiction is. Mm-hmm. So you can recover from it, but you're not cured from the disease to where if you take a drink or you take a drug, the phenomenon of craving rewires in your brain immediately, and you are soon going to be uncontrollable using again.
So I want to still remind you guys that you have a chance to join in the conversation. Bianca, is anybody joining, or are there any questions you want to voice for us?
Yes, I would like to read 2 questions if I would have the time.
I just want to tell you guys, I have plenty of my own questions, but you have a chance, and I want to encourage you to join this chance. Yes, Bianca.
Okay, so one of the questions is from Matthews Barras, and he's asking, do you believe that for some drugs like mushrooms or MDMA, there's a healthy recreational way or even a therapeutic way or leveraging the upsides of altered states of consciousness while maneuvering and mitigating risks of addiction and other downsides?
100%. I can go a little deeper and say that I am 100% in with the scientific approach for those kinds of medicines. I see them as medicines. Personally, I don't need them anymore. And for someone like me, it's very likely going to trigger me back into use. I know that there's some studies going on right now for psilocybin and PTSD and trauma and even addiction, which I'm 100% for. And there's also another, psychedelic medicine that I am 100% on board for. And very, very soon, I will actually have something going on with it. Ibogaine. And Ibogaine is going to end up being the cure for the opioid crisis, 100%. It's just, it's misused right now. People are disrespecting the medicinal value of it in search of an experience. But I went down to Mexico in 2013 with a 3-gram-a-day heroin habit. I did Ibogaine, and 24 hours later, I have no withdrawals, no cravings, and I am ready for life. The only problem was the place that I went started giving me weed and acid, and I went home to the United States, the same environment, the same apartment, same friends, no aftercare program, and I was using again in 4 to 6 months. So there is a, to answer your question 100%, yes, there is medicinal use to it.
Bianca, do you have other questions there to
Yes,
ask?
there is one other question from an anonymous attendee this time. She says, I am a teacher and I see students smoking weed, vaping, and drinking alcohol. I have spoken to them about their habits. Are the students on the borderline, or are they too far gone and need professional treatment?
And I would actually like to add to that question, because I have this on my mind as well. Since you have experienced actually drugs from fairly young age, what is the right way to actually talk to children about that?
And it's a really difficult answer to, depending on the position that you're in, like a teacher, for instance. I would find someone that can come talk to your class that's been through it. Like a legitimate person that can come into your school and give them the message of their life, where it headed. And the interesting thing is, a vast majority of American teenagers admit to experimenting with alcohol, marijuana, and other illicit drugs by the age of 14. The age of 14, but not all of them become addicts. Yeah. So there is something different in the way that people drink or use that ends up, in a place where they do it uncontrollably. It's a powerful conversation to have, but I strongly recommend getting somebody in there that's been through the whole walk, so that they can do like kind of a peer-to-peer approach to them. Because it's really hard to talk to young boys, and mostly young boys don't listen, to tell them as an authority what not to do, because we like to fight back. But someone that comes in and says, this was my life at 12, 13, 14, 15. This is how I was experiencing, and 20 years later, this is me, homeless, almost dead.
That's a really good advice. And Bianca, if there are any more questions, or if anybody wants to join us, please welcome them. But meanwhile, I want to ask a follow-up question for parents who are just concerned because they have children, and they, we parents, we're always told that you don't know what your children are doing and going through, and don't delude yourself. Is there a healthy way to discuss these topics? Because you bring in someone who has been through that if you see the problem brewing. But if you just have a regular bunch of teenagers in your home, do you have to talk about these things, and how?
Yeah, 100%. You have to have the conversation with them. And I think a really good prelude to any conversation about what not to do is what to do. Like, what do you want with your life? Really, really get that why embedded in them. That kind of conversation with a kid early on, 5, 6, 7, having that conversation constantly, like, what do you love about life? What do you want to do with your life? It'll change from, an astronaut and a president to, I want to be an engineer. It'll change as it goes. But if you keep that conversation going, then the opportunity that comes up, like, hey, a lot of kids are going to be bringing, marijuana to parties and alcohol to parties. And I just want to, share with you that highly, highly, highly moves you away from what you actually want with your life. Here's some, you can even, and depending on their age, you can even like show them some studies and say, hey, here's the reality of it. The thing that you don't want to do is just tell them, do not do it. You want to give them a space to make an informed decision based on what they want with their life, because that's always going to be the strongest choice they can make. If they're making a choice based on what you tell them not to do, they don't have it down here. But if they have why they want life, and then they decide they don't want drugs in their life because of this, it's over. They're not going to do it.
But you were a very good student, and you were in sports and everything. So you kind of had at least on the surface, it looked like you were very successful and headed for success rather than for disaster. What went wrong in your case?
I don't remember having the conversation. I actually legitimately don't remember having the conversation. And the person that introduced me to cocaine was the person that I looked up to most at the time.
So how about another scenario? Nowadays, a lot of parents are trying to be understanding to the degree where they say, let's try it all together. If you have to try it, let's do it together, or let me, be there for you or with you. And I don't want to talk about the legal ramifications of that, because I imagine that if your child is underage, that's not really, legal, but still, what do you think about this kind of approach? Because if kids are interested, in the Netherlands, the belief is that whatever is forbidden is interesting, whatever is allowed loses the appeal.
Yeah. And I hear that, and I want to prelude this with I'm not a parent yet. And I want to say that each relationship with your child is different. If you are trying to be a cool friend to your child, that's going to fail you. Yeah. If you're trying to smoke weed with them because you want to be cool and you want to say, hey, just as long as you do it here, we're cool parents, that's not going to work. Because you have to keep a parent role with your children. You have to have that different role. Because I got to a point where, I love my dad, and him and I were basically friends, and when I smoked weed with him for my first time when I was 16, and I can't say that it was great for the longevity of our relationship. But I would also say that I have, the way that you communicate with your kids is different in every single scenario. If you're letting them smoke in the house just to let them experiment and be safe, and you have the conversation around, hey, I really don't want you doing it out there, but I know how prevalent it is, and I want you to have a safe space to come to me always with whatever happens. I want you to have that safe space, because you want to be the parent where they call when they're in trouble. You want to be that. You don't want to be the authoritarian person. But it's thin ice allowing drinking and smoking and all that kind of stuff in the house. It's all about the communication that you have with them.
So talking about thin ice, we just talked also about the popular topic in our industry, which is psychedelics and all of that. Isn't that also sometimes a thin ice kind of journey? And how do you know when it goes too far? Because my logic is that if something is not advisable to children, then probably it's not so good for you, including marijuana for that matter. So how do you know when the line has been crossed, and when it's okay to experiment and to use it for some purposes?
Yeah, I think that for yourself, you need to understand the frequency at which you're doing it, and the frequency which you're talking about it, and the frequency of which you are thinking about it, right? So if you are constantly talking about psilocybin trips, and you're talking about these ceremonies that you're going to next weekend, and then you're talking about it again the following weekend about when you're doing the following weekend, it takes you to a place where you need that thing to feel alive. And in reality, here's the thing, is that you don't. I've done tons of acid, tons of mushrooms, and tons of psychedelics, and I have gotten a lot out of those trips. But I've also gone to a place where I was, microdosing acid for 2 months, but I didn't realize that what microdosing was at the time, and I was taking a hit or 2 hits or 3 hits a day, and it takes you to a different place, and you're not able to actually do what you want to do. So if you're seeking the experience in order to learn, and that's the only way that you think you can learn, then take a break.
So how do you realize you have an addiction? And I understand for a lot of addicts, the problem is that they refuse to acknowledge the addiction.
And this is a great question. I have this question all the time, and I have the exact same response. Quit for 30 days. Stop for 30 days, 100%, and message me back. And when you decide day one, message me. And then if you make it to 30 days, message me, but also message me right after it doesn't work, if it doesn't. Because that's what makes an addict. If you are somebody that when you drink or use, you don't know how much you're going to drink or use, and you are not able to stop once you start, that's what makes you an addict. That's what makes you an alcoholic if you're drinking. So give yourself 30 days. If you can stop, you might still have a binge problem, but there's work that can be done with being able to get 30 days.
And if you can't get through 30 days, what do you do?
You know that you have a very serious problem that will end up needing help. Because, by proxy, if you can't stop, that means that you need help. So the pathway for recovery is so interesting with so many different people, because for me, I had to do everything. I was being coached by, New York Times bestselling authors and, the number 47 speaker in the entire world when I was addicted and had a needle in my arm. I had all of these different accolades while I had a needle in my arm. And I had to go through that whole process of learning myself with my addiction and everything that it was taking away from me, in order to find how hopeless and helpless I actually was in regards to drugs and alcohol. Everything else, I'm pretty good at making a goal and getting a goal. But when it came to drugs and alcohol, I couldn't do it. And then I had to start seeking every possible thing. And then I had to learn that knowledge, doesn't matter how much knowledge you have about addiction and about your own addiction, it's not enough to stop. You end up having to get help. And the beautiful thing now is that there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of help. And you just have to get to a point where you're willing to ask for it.
So I do want to be mindful of the questions that come in. So Bianca, if there is a question that needs to be asked, please do. But I want to go with my questions as well. So if you have a person in your life who is struggling with addiction, not necessarily a child, what's the best thing you can do to support them or to help them? And do you have to help them, or do you have to do something else?
100% the best thing you can do if you have somebody in your life that's struggling with addiction that you care about is, at least once a month, just text them and tell them you love them and that you're thinking of them. And in any conversation with them, when you have the opportunity to talk to them, never bring up their addiction. Don't bring up drugs, don't bring up alcohol, don't even bring it up, because that will make it so that it's not a safe space for them to bring it up. And if you are, continually reminding them that even in their addiction, you love them. Even in their addiction, you're thinking about them. And you're not judging them or telling them what they have to do and all these things. Every addict knows we need to stop. We all know. We all know. What we lose is the knowledge that we have love and support. Because everybody that doesn't understand, right? If you don't have addiction, you don't understand. And a lot of people that are trying to help addicts that don't understand that not understanding, don't understand that not understanding is what damages the relationship. Like, you don't understand what I'm going through. How can you tell me what to do when you've never been through this? When you think that you can just stop, So just tell them you love them and don't bring up their addiction. And then be ready when they bring it up to you. Just support them and just be there with them.
So a slightly mild addiction that a lot of us have around us, smoking, for example. If you have a person that you love who is addicted to that, you don't bring it up ever. I know it's not damaging their life, but it does end up sometimes in, heart attack and cancer and whatnot.
Cigarettes is a little different. For me, it's a little different because it's just not the same as serious drug addiction.
It doesn't kill immediately.
But if I have friends that are smoking cigarettes, the only people that I really associate with that smoke cigarettes are people that are either using drugs or in early recovery. And I'm associating with them to help them. If they're going to get into my car, I have a rule that if you smoked a cigarette, you got to run around my car 3 times and air that nasty stuff out before you get in. And I'm very clear that I hate the smell of cigarettes. And I'm also someone that smoked a pack a day. And on my first ever 30 days clean and sober, I cold turkey cigarettes. Cold turkey. And on day 38, I ran a mile in 7 minutes and 18 seconds because I said, let's go. I'm ready. So when it comes to cigarettes, you can absolutely mention that, I hate the smell of them. Remind them what, that it does smell, because most smokers don't understand that they smell bad.
That's true. I asked it because I do come across, I have people that I love who actually struggle with that, but coming back to stronger stuff and to addiction in the sense that we were discussing it so far, what to do if you feel that your loved one has this problem and they don't realize that, and you want to help. Is it futile to try to help?
Absolutely not. It's not futile. And depending what the relationship is, because I have this conversation with a lot of different people that are struggling with an addict that they love, right? 47% of American adults have somebody in their life that they love that is struggling right now with substance use disorder. That's a huge figure. So
it is huge, yeah.
Huge. And if somebody is not aware that their drinking is out of control and they're embarrassing you because of it or something like that, right? The best approach is to ask them what they think about their drinking. Ask them to think about their drug use. What do you think about the amount of alcohol that you're drinking? Because if you're getting...
Are people becoming defensive immediately? I'm fine. I have no problem.
If you come at them and say, your drinking is really bothering me, then all they can do is defend.
Yeah.
And then if you open up the question in a way where they can introspect and tell you what they think about it, and there's an honest answer, that opens up a space where you're being honest with each other. It opens up, okay, they're honest about what their thoughts are. And if they say, I'm fine, I could stop and everything, and then you say, okay, I'm glad that you can stop. I just want to let you know that what happened last night was extremely embarrassing for me. and it's happened on this date and this date and this date, and just say, the things that have happened. And I just want to let you know I love you. I really care about you. And I just think it's a conversation I needed to open up and let you know my feelings about. That's a great first conversation,
So yeah, as I said, the topic is incredibly interesting to me. Bianca, let me know if there is any question or anybody maybe wants to join us.
I would have a question from
Okay.
from the audience. Numi is asking, I'm not an expert in the field of addiction or close to it at all, but if a friend or family member shares their struggle or shows sign of addiction, what would you suggest I do or say that will be helpful and impactful for them?
I would connect them with someone that is extremely knowledgeable about it. There's a lot of different people that are doing recovery influencing right now, that are sharing their stories and making it public about recovery and things like that. Because the most important thing for someone that's struggling and looking for help, first thing they need is hope. Because a lot of times when we're stuck in our addiction, we're stuck in our alcoholism, we don't have hope to ever stop because we can't stop, So letting them know that there's hope. And then also you can ask them, because a lot of us, a huge percentage of us, if you ask us, what do you need to do to stop? And then you just open up the space, you're silent. What do you think you need to do to stop? A lot of us would be like, well, I think I need to go to a meeting every day and do the 12 steps, and then you say, oh, great. Well, is there any way I can support you to do that? Just like it's the same as life. How many of you know something right now that you should be doing that you're not? Me. So there's, it's the same thing. And it's more so, it's the same thing as when you're talking to a kid about their purpose. You want them to answer it, what they need to do, and then support them in that answer and encourage them and empower them to follow through with that.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit piggybacking on that question, how do you detect, and I'm not trying to be snoopy here, but how do you detect that somebody that you love has a problem? Because usually people do keep it a secret.
Well, it depends the relationship. If it's someone that you are in, a romantic partnership with, there's different ways to tell, and that's a different conversation also, because I will 100% recommend somebody, if you're in a romantic relationship with an addict, start the conversation immediately, and soon it's going to get to an ultimatum point, because very few of us actually recover forever. And I don't know if you want that in your life in the future. Some of us do, but it has to start. And then to detect it, it depends what drug and everything as well. You can tell somebody, like our face will sink, our glow will go away. You'll catch us in lies, like little meaningless lies, because that's kind of how we're living right then. If we have to leave somewhere where we're at for 10, 15 minutes and then come back, oh, I need to grab something out of my car, things like that. It's, for me, my addiction became extremely, extremely obvious, and if someone is using, it depends what drugs they're using also. If anybody is using cocaine, or crack or meth or heroin or any kind of opiate painkiller, or benzodiazepine, Xanax, and things like that, that's a problem right away. Like, that's something that you want to have a conversation with, and you want to open it up, and because that's not something you want in your life. I'm telling you, as somebody that does nothing but talk to addicts and addicts in recovery, you don't want to subject yourself to having a suffering addict in partnership with, because you won't end up being the one that helps them. And it's a very difficult journey. And more often than not, we have to have an ultimatum that we're going to lose the relationship in order to get the help. And also, after losing the relationship, we're much more likely to actually recover. So, and it's hard to say. It's hard to say, because I love my people. I don't want them to lose their relationships, but I care about everybody,
And I guess it's a very interesting topic in itself. But, you know, as you were talking, I realized that I'm notoriously bad at realizing that people in my life might be entertaining themselves with all sorts of substances, because now that you were talking, I suddenly remembered all the instances throughout my life where I found out with shock that somebody was regularly using, for example, cocaine, right next to me without me even realizing that. Is that okay to just be oblivious of that and just keep living your life without realizing
100%.
that the person next to you?
Yes. Yes. For you,
so you don't have to go out and try to make the world around you clean.
No. You have an incredible platform. You have an incredible purpose. You have an incredible mission. Stick with it. Don't, like, there's people that are there for that. You should have your blinders on for addiction, because if somebody brings it into your world, you have the love and support for them. But there's no reason to beat yourself up about not noticing it. It's selective attention again. You don't need to be looking for it. It's not in your life, you know, and God bless you.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you for this advice, by the way, because I feel the topic is so heavy on us, and I'm so glad we actually got to talk about that here. And I still have many questions, but not much time. Bianca, just checking on you. I know that there were questions popping. Is there anything that needs to be asked here right now?
There would be one question that maybe students would want a little bit of more clarity. What do you have to say of nicotine addiction, not only tobacco smoking, but vaping too?
What I would, you know, we don't have any long-term studies on vaping, but I can tell you that it's bad. It's not good. And when it comes to the addiction of it, if we were to take nicotine out of cigarettes and out of vaping, nicotine actually has a lot of positive effects. It can help reverse Alzheimer's. It can help with focus. It can help with, it stimulates the brain in a way where, you know, we're able to think in a way. But it's the process of smoking. It's the process of putting it up to your lips and inhaling something. It's not just the nicotine that people are getting addicted to. And that's why a lot of times, you know, patches and things like that don't work unless you couple it with, you know, eating an apple or chewing on a cinnamon stick or something like that, where you're using that fixation. If you're watching this right now and you are smoking or vaping, I would ask you, what is it adding to your life? And if you are on a platform like Mind Valley, which is all about personal development, what is that adding to your development as a human being? And it will 100%, it will decrease your value of life. It will decrease your longevity of life. And at some point in life, you know, if you're going to live to 85 or 95, smoking will make the last 10 to 20 years worse. It will make it harder. So I suggest doing whatever it takes.
Thank you for that answer, by the way. And that was the one addiction I've had through my life, but fortunately I don't smoke right now, which is good for a long time. And I understand actually a little bit how hard it can be to give up things which you are pretty clear how bad they are to you. So I want to ask the last question. Well, two last questions. One of them is, what would you want the world to understand about addiction? Because this is a conversation we don't have enough. So if there was this one thing that you think everyone should understand and know.
That the way it's being treated right now is wrong. And the whole foundation, the whole root of the system of treating addicts is wrong. And the conversation for opening up everything for discussion about how to do it needs to be opened up. And the entire community, whether you are a family member of an addict, whether you are a psychologist, psychiatrist, or an addict or someone in recovery, we have to come together with the collected consciousness of we're working on a solution together. And we're not saying our way is right and your way is wrong. So I believe that something is coming very, very soon, and it's going to change the game. It's going to change the game for addicts. It's going to eradicate the the part of addiction that makes it so that you don't have hope. Because 11% of addicts in America, and all my stats are American, 11% of addicts receive the treatment they need. How is that possible? How are 281,000 addicts looking for treatment and unable to get it? How is that possible per year, at least? It's wrong, and it's monetized, and the Exact Treatment Center it's just foundationally wrong, and it's about to be pulled up at the root.
It's also criminalized. I have seen people who refuse to ask for help because they are afraid of consequences of being caught in under influence. Especially when I lived in Asia, that's a very dangerous topic. So thank you for this honest conversation. Oh wow, it is called honest conversation. and I want to ask the last question: if people want to. If they need your help for whatever reasons, how can they work with you? Where can they find you? And we'll obviously share all of that in the notes for the recording as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to recoveredonpurpose.com. I actually have my book on there for free, a digital and audio copy. And if you're in recovery, I also made a really cool and fun relapse prevention worksheet that's free on there. Anybody is welcome to reach out at adam@recoveredonpurpose.com. And if you want to follow content and things like that, you can Facebook Recovered on Purpose.
Thank you, Adam, so much. It was very, very interesting and I think very necessary conversation. And although I don't struggle with addiction directly personally right now, I think it's a topic that we should discuss more. So thank you for that. Traditionally, I want to ask everybody who is online with me right now to leave a heart for my guests in the chat. Yes, thank you.
Give one back.
And
I have one back here for you too.
In recording, leave a heart under the video. And by the way, guys who are waiting to watch for it in recording, because it's so scary to come and admit this is a topic that I'm interested in. I think we should all be a little more interested in this topic, and we should all talk about that. And there is no judgment. So leave your hearts. It's worth it. Thank you, Adam, so much for your time. Yeah. And
thank you, Christina.
Yeah, for your really straightforward, honest, and such an easy energy, because you make this conversation tolerable. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me, Christina. And thank you everybody for watching and caring about our community. Love you all.
Thank you all, and I'll see you in a week. And thank you, Bianca, also for supporting us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.